The 3 stars on his shoulders meant nothing in Harrison Falls. General Harlan Brooks understood this the instant Sergeant Royce slammed him against his SUV at the Murphy Gas and Go. "The only mistake was thinking you belonged here," Royce said with cold disdain, tightening the handcuffs around wrists that had once signed orders, sending troops into harm's way. Yet Harlan was not merely another black man unjustly detained. Years earlier, he had dismantled Colonel Dorian Vane's Covert Operations Unit for deliberately targeting minority communities, earning himself a patient and calculating enemy. Now, from the back seat of the patrol car, as he initiated the Falcon lock protocol with a single quiet call, he could not see Mayor Wilson watching through the security cameras, texting his shadowy partner. "He's inside." Nor could he see Colonel Reese Winters at the Pentagon receiving the distress code, her voice barely above a whisper. They activated it. What had begun as small-town racism was in truth the opening move in a deadly game of chess long in the making. Before we continue, I would love to know where you are watching from today. And if you are enjoying these stories, make sure you are subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely will not want to miss. The afternoon sun beat down on the weathered SUV as it rolled along the quiet roads of Harrison Falls, Virginia. Behind the wheel sat General Harlan Brooks. His 3 stars and crisp uniform had been traded for a simple blue t-shirt and worn jeans. After months of Pentagon meetings and diplomatic missions, this personal leave felt both foreign and necessary, a chance to breathe away from the constant weight of command. He adjusted the struggling air conditioner against the summer heat. The dashboard GPS showed he was still some distance from his uncle's fishing cabin, a refuge he had not visited in years. First, though, he needed gasoline. The needle hovered dangerously close to empty. A weathered sign for Murphy's Gas and Go appeared ahead, and he signaled to turn in. The station looked like countless others across small-town America. Faded pumps, sun-bleached signs, and a single-story convenience store whose windows were plastered with lottery promotions. Nothing remarkable, nothing threatening, just another forgettable stop on the road to solitude. As he parked beside a pump, Harlan noticed 2 men loading supplies into a pickup truck. Their glances lingered a moment longer than usual before they drove away. Looks like that were nothing new to him. A lifetime of being black and holding authority had taught him to recognize the quiet calculations in strangers' eyes. He had learned neither to ignore them nor to confront them, but simply to note them and keep moving. Inside the store, fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he walked the narrow aisles toward the refrigerated section. The clerk behind the counter, a middle-aged white man with thinning hair and the name Frank embroidered on his shirt, watched him with undisguised suspicion. What Harlan could not know was that Frank had recognized him not from news coverage of his military achievements, but from a photograph circulating in a private online forum where former officers shared conspiracy theories about government infiltration. Frank had once been a police officer until complaints of excessive force ended his career months earlier. Now, he scanned barcodes instead of patrolling neighborhoods, yet his resentment had only grown deeper. "Good afternoon," Harlan said politely, placing a bottle of water on the counter. "Just passing through?" Frank asked, without moving to ring up the purchase. "Yes, heading to Miller Point to fish." Harlan kept his tone cordial despite the evident hostility. Frank glanced out the window toward the SUV. "You've been at that pump a good while without buying gas." "I plan to fill the tank before I leave," Harlan replied, sliding a $5 bill across the counter. Frank finally rang up the water. "We don't get many strangers around here. People notice things." The implied threat hung between them. Harlan accepted his change with a calm "Thank you," and returned to the pump. As he inserted his card and began fueling, he saw Frank inside on the phone, glancing repeatedly in his direction. Harlan had faced enough prejudice to recognize when a situation was turning dangerous, but he had also learned which battles were worth fighting. A confrontation with a small-town clerk would change nothing for his career or for national security. So he focused on finishing the task and moving on. He was replacing the nozzle when the unmistakable wail of sirens sliced through the humid air. In moments, 2 patrol cars arrived, blocking both the entrance and his SUV. 3 officers stepped out, 2 men and a woman, their hands already resting on their holsters. The lead officer, broad-shouldered with a short haircut and reflective sunglasses, approached with practiced intimidation. His name tag read, Sergeant Royce. "Hands where I can see them," Royce ordered, though Harlan's hands were already visible. "Is there a problem, officer?" Harlan asked, his voice steady and respectful, the same tone he used when calming rival commanders in the field. "We received a report of suspicious activity at the pumps," Royce answered. "I need to see identification." Harlan reached slowly for his wallet. "May I ask what suspicious activity I'm supposed to have committed? Identification first, questions after." Royce snapped. Officer Harper James positioned herself to the side. Early in her career as a law enforcement officer, she was still idealistic enough to believe in fair justice and uneasy enough with the situation to hesitate as her colleagues closed in. Harlan handed over his driver's license and military identification. "I'm General Harlan Brooks of the United States Army. I'm on personal leave, heading to a family cabin to fish." Royce barely glanced at the documents before passing them to the 3rd officer. "General, huh? What brings you to Harrison Falls? We're not exactly on your usual Pentagon route." "As I said, I'm on leave. My uncle's cabin is a couple of hours north." Something in Royce's demeanor shifted, not toward respect, but toward sharper hostility. "Step away from the vehicle, sir." "May I ask why?" "I've already identified myself and explained my presence." "Step away from the vehicle now," Royce repeated, his hand moving toward his holster. Harlan complied, recognizing the danger in the officer's posture. Decades in uniform had taught him when to assert authority and when to yield to prevent unnecessary escalation. This moment required the latter. "Face the vehicle and put your hands on the hood," Royce ordered. Harlan obeyed, his mind already mapping possible outcomes. As a 3-star general, he commanded thousands of troops and managed multi-million-dollar operations. Here, at a gas station in Harrison Falls, he was simply a black man, at the mercy of local authority. "Sergeant," Officer Harper James said quietly. "His military ID checks out. He's a general." "I don't care if he's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs," Royce muttered. "We got a call. We're going to investigate." He turned to Harlan. "Spread your legs." As Royce performed an unnecessarily thorough search, Harlan kept his composure. "Officer, I believe this constitutes harassment. I haven't committed any crime." "Questioning my authority." Royce's voice hardened. "That sounds like resistance." He yanked Harlan's arms behind his back. The handcuffs snapped shut with a decisive click. "You're making a mistake," Harlan said through gritted teeth. Royce leaned close, his breath hot against Harlan's ear. "The only mistake was thinking you belonged here." Officer Harper James watched with growing discomfort as Royce marched Harlan toward the patrol car. This was not procedure. This was not right. But before she could intervene, Harlan was already being pushed into the back seat. "My phone," Harlan said as the door began to close. "I have the right to a call." Royce hesitated, then reached into Harlan's pocket and pulled out a sleek black smartphone. "One call," he said, handing it through the window before slamming the door. Inside the cruiser, Harlan examined the device. It was not his personal phone, but a secure military one of the privileges and burdens of his rank. He dialed a memorized number and waited for the connection. "Security office," came the clear voice. "Initiate Falcon lock," Harlan said quietly. "This is Brooks. Send it up the chain." "Understood, sir. Falcon lock may. Wait. He ended the call just as Royce slid behind the wheel. In the rearview mirror, their eyes met briefly. Royce's filled with mocking satisfaction, Harlan's steady with calm determination. As the patrol car pulled away, neither man noticed the security camera above the station entrance, nor the figure watching the live feed from a back office. Mayor Howard Wilson sipped his coffee while observing the scene on his monitor. Years in local politics had taught him to recognize opportunity when it appeared. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. "He's inside. Time to see how far this goes." Across the country, in a nondescript office inside the Pentagon's E-ring, Colonel Reese Winters stared at the alert on her secure terminal. Falcon lock. A code she had hoped never to activate. A code meaning one of her highest-ranking officers was in immediate danger with no defensive resources available. "Oh no," she whispered, quickly pulling up the location. "They activated it. It's happening." She reached for her secure line, already calculating response scenarios. What was unfolding in Harrison Falls had just escalated from a local incident to a matter of national security. The station smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Harlan sat upright on the metal bench in the holding cell, his expression neutral as he stared straight ahead. His military identification and personal effects had been placed in a plastic box labeled Brooks H on a desk outside the cell, where Sergeant Royce made a show of filling out paperwork. "So, General," Royce said, emphasizing the title with barely concealed mockery, "how do the accommodations compare to Pentagon standards?" Harlan did not answer. His silence was deliberate, a tactic that had served him well in negotiation rooms and hostile territories. Let them fill the silence. Let them reveal themselves. "Not in a talking mood now?" Royce continued, stepping closer to the cell. "You militia types always think you're better than the rest of us, don't you? Above the law. Special rules." "I haven't broken any law, Sergeant," Harlan said finally, his voice measured. "And I haven't asked for special treatment." "You made a call," Royce replied. "To whom exactly? Your powerful friends in Washington?" Harlan simply held Royce's gaze, neither confirming nor denying. The standoff was interrupted by Officer Harper James entering with a file. "Sergeant, I've processed the initial report, but there's still no clear charge listed. Suspicious behavior and resistance," Royce said without looking at her. "Sir, the body camera footage shows no resistance," she said, her eyes flicking briefly toward Harlan. "And suspicious behavior needs to be supported by specific observations." Royce turned to her, irritation plain on his face. "Write it the way I told you, Officer James, unless you'd prefer traffic duty for the next month." James hesitated, then nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir." She retreated to her desk, but not before casting another glance at Harlan. In that moment, he knew he had found an ally, however reluctant. While James settled at her desk, she noticed something unusual about the general. He was not anxious or angry like most detainees. He was observing, cataloging. His eyes moved methodically across the room, noting exits, cameras, and personnel. It was the behavior of someone already 3 steps ahead, gathering intelligence for a countermove. Outside the station, a black SUV with government plates parked across the street. Its windows were tinted beyond legal limits, and no one exited the vehicle. Inside the station, the security cameras flickered off for several seconds before resuming their feed. No one noticed, except Harlan, whose eyes followed each camera in sequence. The game had begun. Lena Brooks was in the middle of editing a legal brief when her secure line rang. As one of the country's most respected civil rights attorneys, she was accustomed to urgent calls. But the vibration pattern of this particular phone sent a chill through her. It was reserved for emergencies involving her husband's work. "This is Lena," she answered, already moving toward her home office and closing the door. "It's Winters," came the strained reply. "Harlan has been detained in Harrison Falls, Virginia. Local police, but it's not what it appears." Lena's free hand clenched into a fist. Racial profiling, that's the cover. It's what they're using, Winters said. He's in danger. And it's not only because of his race, it's revenge. Check your secure email. The file will arrive in moments. After you read it, the system will purge it. Lena had known Reese Winters for nearly 2 decades. Since the then captain had served under Harlan in his early career, Winters was not prone to drama or overreaction. Reese, Lena said softly, should I be afraid? There was a pause. Prepare yourself. This runs deeper than either of you knew. After the call ended, Lena remained still, waiting for the promised file. When it arrived, the sender's name sent another wave of unease through her. Midas Secure Drop. Midas was not a person, but a designation, a collective of hackers who occasionally supplied information to government agencies when traditional intelligence channels failed. They operated in the gray spaces between legality and necessity, and their involvement meant whatever was happening transcended normal protocols. The file contained intelligence reports, personnel records, and surveillance summaries, all centered on a project called Obsidian Fence. At the center of one page, a digital death list circled Harlan's name in red. A separate message appeared in her secure chat window. Midas here. This is revenge for something that happened years ago. Your husband made powerful enemies when he dismantled Vane's tactical unit. They've been planning this for a long time. Harrison Falls is only the trigger. Lena's legal mind began working at full speed, analyzing the information while simultaneously formulating a response strategy. She needed leverage, connections, and above all, time. Her fingers moved across her phone before dialing a number she had sworn never to use again. After 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. Office of Senator Hale. This is Lena Brooks. Tell Everett it concerns Obsidian Fence. He has 2 minutes to take my call. 10 seconds later, Senator Everett Hale was on the line. Lena, this is unexpected. Skip the pleasantries, Everett. You tried to block my husband's 3rd star. Now I need your help to save his life. That's a serious accusation, and a serious request, Hale replied cautiously. Why would I do that? Because I have the original authorization documents for Obsidian Fence, Lena interrupted. With your signature approving the racial profiling criteria for high-ranking black officers. How would that look on CNN, Senator? The silence that followed told her everything she needed to know. What do you need? Hale asked finally, his voice cold. Pentagon authorization to access all Obsidian Fence files, and a congressional investigation into the Harrison Falls Police Department, beginning within the hour. You're playing a dangerous game, Lena. No, Everett. Someone is playing with my husband's life. I'm simply changing the rules. Back at the Harrison Falls station, Officer Harper James could not shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The general's detention made no sense. The charges were weak at best, potentially illegal at worst. And Royce's behavior, the unnecessary aggression, the apparent satisfaction, triggered every alarm she had honed through academy training. With Royce momentarily outside for a cigarette break, James slipped into the evidence room. The department's digital systems were outdated, but body camera footage uploaded automatically to a local server for 48 hours before long-term storage. Using her credentials, she accessed the recordings from that afternoon. What she saw confirmed her suspicions. The general had been compliant throughout the encounter. Royce had escalated without provocation. The only resistance occurred after Royce had already initiated excessive force. In the viewing room, James's hand trembled as she downloaded the footage to an encrypted cloud storage account, one not connected to the department. What she was doing could cost her job, perhaps even lead to criminal charges. But what Royce had done was not policing. It was something else entirely. When the upload completed, she noticed a folder on Royce's desk that had not been there earlier. The edge of a document was visible, bearing an emblem she did not recognize. A black fence surrounding what appeared to be a military rank insignia. Without thinking, she photographed it with her personal phone before hurrying back to her post. Night had fallen over Harrison Falls when Harlan was released without explanation. No charges filed, no apology offered, only a curt nod from the desk sergeant and the return of his belongings. "Your vehicle has been delivered to the town motel," the sergeant informed him, sliding a room key across the counter. "Courtesy of the department." Harlan recognized the non-apology for what it was. Damage control. Someone higher up had made a call. As he gathered his belongings, he noticed an unusual folder on the desk behind the sergeant. The same black fence insignia Officer Harper James had photographed was visible in the corner, a symbol Harlan recognized from a past life. It was the marker used by a covert operations unit he himself had dismantled after discovering its unauthorized domestic activities targeting minority communities. Outside the station, the night air felt clean after hours in the cell. He took a moment to center himself before walking toward the motel 2 blocks away. As he walked, he noticed the black SUV that had been parked across from the station, now following him at a discreet distance. Friend or foe, the distinction had blurred in the last day. At the motel, a single-story building with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign, Harlan found his room and entered cautiously. The space was clean but sparse. A bed, a desk, a television that had seen better days. His duffel bag had been placed on the luggage rack, apparently retrieved from the SUV. He checked his secure phone. 3 missed calls from Lena, 2 from Winters, and 1 from an unrecognized number. He would return them soon, but first he needed to ensure the room was secure. A quick sweep revealed no obvious surveillance devices, though in the digital age, monitoring did not require physical bugs. He sent a brief encrypted message to Lena. "I'm safe. We'll call in 30. Love you." Across town, in the shadowy corner of an underground parking garage, Mayor Howard Wilson waited nervously beside his luxury sedan. When heavy footsteps echoed through the concrete structure, he flinched. "You're late," Wilson said, as a tall figure emerged from the darkness. "Politicians do not dictate my schedule," replied the rough voice. Colonel Dorian Vane stepped into the dim light, his military bearing evident despite civilian clothes. Once a rising star in military intelligence, Vane now operated in the shadows, a man whose name had been systematically erased from official records after a quiet discharge years earlier. "Did you get what you needed?" Wilson asked. Vane's smile did not reach his eyes. Brooks behaved exactly as expected. Controlled, strategic, even in humiliation. He thinks like a chess master. That's why he's so dangerous and why he must be broken, not merely defeated. "And my payment?" Wilson began. "Already accounted for," Vane interrupted. "It's the final piece. We break him now, and the rest will fall like dominoes." He finally lit a cigar, its ember glowing in the gloom. "I've waited years to settle this score. Brooks took everything from me. My career, my reputation, my future. Now I take his." Wilson shifted uncomfortably. "And my payment?" Vane reached into his jacket and handed Wilson a USB drive. "As promised, enough blackmail material on your political rivals to secure your next election, plus the federal grant approvals your donors have been waiting for." When Wilson reached for the drive, Vane held it a moment longer. "Remember our agreement, Mayor. When things heat up, and they will, you never met me. You never knew about Obsidian Fence, and you certainly never knew your town was chosen as the detonation point for the largest purge of military intelligence since the Cold War." The drive changed hands, and with it, Harrison Falls' last chance to avoid the storm that was coming. "He's just one man," Wilson said, trying to reassure himself more than Vane. "No," Vane corrected, his voice dropping to a growl. He is the man, and when this ends, they will wish they had never pinned those stars on him. As Wilson walked away, lightning flickered on the horizon, illuminating Vane's solitary figure for a moment, before darkness reclaimed the parking garage. In his motel room, Harlan began making calls, setting in motion a counter-strategy that would shake the foundations of power and expose a conspiracy long in the making. The battle lines were drawn. The first moves had been made. What had begun as a simple case of racial profiling was about to explode into something far more dangerous, and reckoning between men who had once sworn the same oath but had taken radically different paths in service to their vision of America. The motel room now felt like a war room. Maps of Harrison Falls covered one wall, marked with red indicators showing surveillance points. The desk was covered with handwritten notes, financial record printouts, and a burner phone. Harlan Brooks had shed his civilian appearance, replacing it with the sharp focus of a military strategist. In the hours following his release from the police station, he had prepared meticulously while the city slept, unaware that a 3-star general was quietly mounting a counteroffensive from the town's least suspicious location. A soft knock sounded at the door, 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. The pattern was deliberate, a code established earlier. Harlan moved silently to the door, checked the peephole, and opened it. "Marcus Darius, right on time," he greeted the 2 men who entered. Marcus Reynolds and Darius Klein had served under Harlan in the now disbanded Black Ops unit. Now private security consultants, they operated in the shadows where conventional military forces could not reach. Both wore civilian clothes that carefully concealed tactical readiness, relaxed jeans for full mobility, light jackets hiding equipment. "It's good to see you in one piece, sir," Marcus said, his eyes quickly scanning the room with professional assessment. Tall and lean with salt and pepper hair, he moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had survived multiple war zones. "The situation?" Harlan asked, gesturing to the maps. Darius, more solidly built with close-cropped hair and watchful eyes, placed a USB drive on the desk. "It's worse than we thought. The city's financial records show a pattern of military contractors funneling money through shell companies into Harrison Falls infrastructure projects." "Shell companies registered to whom?" Harlan asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Officially to no one, but the routing numbers match accounts previously linked to Dorian Vane's operations in South America," Marcus explained. "Same signature, different continent." Harlan nodded slowly, the pieces fitting together. "He's building something here. Harrison Falls isn't just a trap for me. It's a base of operations." Before they could discuss further, Harlan's secure phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Park bench, 3rd Street, 10 minutes. Come alone. Officer J." "Looks like we have a local source," Harlan said, showing them the message. "I need to move." "Sir, with respect, it could be a trap," Darius warned. "Everything is a trap until proven otherwise," Harlan replied, checking his watch. "But Officer James is our best source inside the department. Cover me from a distance." The morning air was fresh. As Harlan walked the quiet streets of Harrison Falls, few residents were out so early, giving him a clear view of possible surveillance. He detected 3 cameras covering the main street, more than typical for a town this size. The park was a small green space with a few benches and a playground. Officer Harper James sat alone, still in uniform, but with a civilian jacket over her shoulders. Her eyes moved nervously as Harlan approached. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly, when he sat beside her, maintaining professional distance. "You're taking a significant risk, Officer James." "So are you," she replied. "I have names, schedules. Sergeant Royce meets someone at the old mill every Tuesday at midnight. The same man visited Mayor Wilson 3 times last month. Description: tall, military bearing, a scar running from his right eye to his jaw. She slid a USB drive beneath the bench, so Harlan could retrieve it without obvious contact. That's everything. Body camera footage and patrol schedules for the next 2 weeks. Royce has been recruiting, bringing in ex-military with anger issues and giving them badges without proper training. Harlan nodded, absorbing the information. Why are you helping me? Harper's eyes hardened. My brother served in the 82nd Airborne. He came back with PTSD. The system failed him, but his commander didn't. That commander spoke of you once. He said you were the kind of leader who never left a man behind. She stood, adjusting her uniform. I won't leave you behind, sir. As she walked away, Harlan pocketed the USB drive and headed in the opposite direction, his mind racing with implications. Officer James had just confirmed his suspicions. Harrison Falls was not merely corrupt, it was being militarized. Back at his makeshift headquarters, Lena's face filled the screen of the secure laptop. Despite being hundreds of miles away, her presence dominated the small motel room. Behind her, journalist Reggie Matisse reviewed financial documents, his reporter's instincts fully engaged. The money trail is clear, Lena reported. Harrison Falls has received more than $30 million in development grants through a series of shell companies, all ultimately linked to defense contractors who lost major Pentagon contracts when you reformed the acquisition process. And the mayor? Harlan asked. Wilson was nearly bankrupt 3 years ago, Reggie interjected, adjusting his glasses. Now he has 7-figure offshore accounts. It started right after he hired 5 new officers, all with military backgrounds, all with disciplinary flags on their service records. Harlan's mind leapt years earlier to a classified operation in North Africa. Then Lieutenant Colonel Dorian Vane had been his subordinate, a brilliant tactician with a dangerous worldview. During a routine intelligence-gathering mission, Harlan had discovered Vane's unauthorized parallel operation, a systematic effort to eliminate local leaders based on ethnic profiling, along with a plan to implement the same protocol domestically, focusing on minority communities. He wanted a racial purge, Harlan said quietly. First abroad, then at home. When I reported him, he swore revenge. He said I had betrayed my own country for the sake of political correctness. This isn't about politics, Lena said firmly. It's about power. Vane believes certain people should be in charge and others should be beneath them. You threatened that worldview, and now he's building his own army, Harlan concluded, studying the map. We need to find his training camp. That night, dressed in nondescript black clothing, Harlan moved through the forest outside Harrison Falls. Marcus and Darius flanked him at a distance, communicating through secure earpieces. Coordinates from Officer James's USB led them to an unmarked dirt road winding through dense woods. After careful advance, they found it. A compound hidden behind chain-link fences topped with barbed wire. Guards with military-grade weapons patrolled the perimeter. Through binoculars, Harlan observed a training field where men in civilian clothes practiced tactical formations under instructors with military precision. Domestic extremist with professional training, he whispered. Sir, northeast corner. Darius's voice crackled in his ear. That's standard military equipment. Pentagon communications gear. They have the keys to the back door. Someone is supplying them directly from Department of Defense inventory, Marcus added, as if confirming their worst fears. Harlan's secure phone vibrated with an urgent message from Colonel Winters. Backdoor access detected in the Pentagon biometric database. Vane has the keys to the kingdom. He's not only targeting you. The death list includes 12 other officers who supported your reforms. I'm warning you now. Be careful. The threat had expanded beyond personal revenge. Vane was not merely seeking vengeance. He was organizing a purge of military leadership, targeting those who championed inclusion and accountability. We need to move, Harlan told his team. The digital battlefield just opened. They withdrew through the forest, but a snapped twig alerted a perimeter guard. Gunfire shattered the night silence. The team scattered, using their training to evade pursuit through thick underbrush. Back at the city limits, they regrouped behind an abandoned barn. "They're more organized than we anticipated," Marcus reported, checking his gear for tracking devices. "And now they know we're after them." Harlan nodded grimly. "It's time to accelerate our timeline." At the motel, Officer Harper James waited in the shadows of the parking lot. Her patrol car was nowhere in sight, and she wore civilian clothes, a backpack clutched tightly to her chest. "They know," she said as soon as Harlan approached. "Royce found spyware on his patrol computer. He's looking for the source. I've been reassigned to desk duty, but I think they suspect me." "You need to get out of town," Harlan said. She shook her head. "No, not until I give you this." She handed him a flash drive. "It's the file they created to frame you. They've fabricated evidence to make it look like you diverted military funds to support radical groups." Harlan examined the drive. "They're not only trying to disgrace me, they're setting me up for treason charges." Back in the motel room, the team reviewed the fabricated evidence against Harlan. The forgeries were sophisticated. Bank records, emails, even manipulated photos showing him meeting with known extremists. "They've been building this for years," Lena said through the secure line. "This isn't impulse, it's calculation." A knock at the door silenced everyone. Darius positioned himself with his weapon, while Marcus checked the security feed they had installed. On the small monitor, an elderly man in a fishing vest stood alone with his hands visible. "Silas Bennett," Harlan said with surprise, recognizing the man, an expert in domestic threat assessment. After security protocols, Bennett was allowed inside. The old spy moved slowly, yet his eyes missed nothing, cataloging every aspect of the operation. "Heard you stirred up a hornet's nest, Brooks," he said, settling into a chair. "Thought you might need some insurance." He placed an aged leather portfolio on the desk. Locations, dates, personnel files. Every place similar setups have been run against influential black leaders in government and the military. Harlan opened the portfolio to find meticulously documented cases spanning years. "Project Sentinel," read the cover. "A conspiracy to identify, isolate, and neutralize minority figures who reach positions of real influence," Bennett explained. "It began as a monitoring program and evolved into active sabotage. Vane didn't create it. He inherited it, then militarized it." The revelation sent a chill through the room. What had seemed like personal revenge was in truth a systematic operation with deeper roots and broader reach than anyone had imagined. Harlan looked at the faces of his team, Marcus and Darius, veterans who had faced death in distant lands. Officer James risking her career and safety. Lena on the screen, fighting through legal channels. Reggie documenting everything for posterity. This was no longer only his battle. It was a war for the soul of the institutions they had all sworn to protect. "This ends now," Harlan said with quiet force. "And it ends where it began." He turned to Lena on the screen. "I need everything you can find on Vane's military career. Every operation, every connection to his team. This is no longer about justice. It's war, and I will finish it where it started." As dawn rose over Harrison Falls, the pieces moved into position for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of power and expose a cancer that had been growing in the shadows for years. Memories surfaced without warning as Harlan studied the documents scattered across the motel desk. North Africa, years earlier. A younger Major Harlan Brooks, leading a specialized reconnaissance unit, with Captain Dorian Vane as his second-in-command. Vane had been brilliant, but volatile. Always pushing boundaries, always questioning why certain officers advanced faster than others. "They're grooming you," Vane had said one night in the barracks, his voice low and resentful. "They see something in you they want to control. They'll promote you above better men because you fit their narrative. Harlan had dismissed it then as jealousy. But later, when Vane was passed over for command of a covert unit in favor of Harlan, something broke in the man. His ambition turned to bitterness. His tactical brilliance twisted toward sabotage. The memory faded as Lena's voice came through the secure line. "Harlan, something just arrived at the house. Security protocol? Followed to the letter," he replied immediately. "No explosives, no biological agents." There was a pause. "It's your silver star cut in half, with a note that says, 'One more piece to bury.'" The threat was unmistakable. Vane was not only coming for Harlan's career or reputation, he wanted his life, and he wanted Lena to know that what was coming was inevitable. "Secure your safety. Don't go anywhere alone," Harlan instructed, his mind already calculating new contingencies. Before Lena could respond, Officer Harper James burst through the door, her uniform disheveled and a bruise forming on her cheek. "They know," she gasped. "Someone saw me accessing the files. Royce slashed my tires. When I got home, my apartment had been ransacked." She held up her badge. "I've been suspended pending investigation for computer crimes. I barely got out before they came to arrest me." Darius immediately secured the perimeter while Marcus checked for surveillance. "We need to move," he advised. "This location is compromised." Within 20 minutes, they had relocated to a safe house on the outskirts of town, a cabin owned by one of Bennett's old contacts. While they set up new equipment, Colonel Reese Winters connected via encrypted video. "We've broken the encryption on the Obsidian fence files," she reported, her face grave on the small screen. "It's worse than we thought. The Pentagon created a list to monitor black officers who were rising too fast or inspiring too many others who might change the established order." "How many?" Harlan asked. 47. You were number 1. The most dangerous because you were the most respected by both troops and civilians." The revelation landed like a physical blow. Harlan had dedicated his life to an institution that had secretly marked him as a threat, simply for succeeding while black. "Who authorized it?" Lena demanded from her separate video feed. "That's the problem," Winters replied. "Multiple authorization signatures across administrations and party lines. This wasn't ideological. It was institutional. With this new information, Harlan requested an emergency meeting with Admiral Vivian Lutz and Senator Everett Hale. Hours later, they convened in a secure government facility in Richmond. The tension was palpable across the conference table. "These allegations are explosive," Senator Hale began, his political instincts already calculating damage control. "If they're true, they're true," Harlan interrupted, sliding the authenticated documents across the table. "And you signed the annual renewal in 2015. Senator Hale paled, but maintained composure. "It was presented as a leadership evaluation program. Nothing in the report suggested racial targeting. Plausible deniability built into the system," Admiral Lutz observed quietly. Each level saw only what it needed to see. Harlan studied both of them. Lutz with her decades navigating Pentagon politics, Hale with his presidential ambitions. Both had reasons to distance themselves from this scandal. Both could be useful if handled correctly. "I'm stepping back from this," he announced suddenly. "Effective immediately. I'll take extended leave and withdraw from all operational duties." Hale and Lutz exchanged surprised glances at the apparent surrender. A wise decision given the circumstances, Hale offered cautiously. "The military appreciates your discretion in this sensitive matter." "I'm sure it does," Harlan replied neutrally, rising to leave. "I only need your assurances that any investigation into these false embezzlement charges will be handled with the same discretion." After securing their reluctant promises, Harlan exited the meeting. Outside, Colonel Winters waited by the car. "They took the bait," she confirmed quietly. "Line and sinker," Harlan replied. "Hale is already calling his media contacts to control the narrative. Lutz is mobilizing internal affairs to find a scapegoat. And while they do that, They'll feed disinformation directly to Vane through their compromised channels. He'll think I'm retreating when I'm actually advancing. The strategy was classic military deception, appearing to show the opponent what he expected while positioning for the true attack. By seeming to retreat, Harlan had just bought crucial time and maneuvering room. Back at the safe house, a reunion years in the making took place. Veterans from Harlan's old unit arrived one by one, men and women who had served under his command in the shadows of American military power. Some still wore the uniform. Others had moved into civilian life. All had come because of a simple message. The general needs you. No questions. Total deniability. The atmosphere was tense. Some still harbored resentment over the unit's dissolution years earlier. Sergeant Major William Parker, now a construction foreman in Tennessee, was the most vocal. "You shut us down when we were doing good work," Parker challenged. "You said we were operating outside parameters. We were eliminating threats before they reached our shores. They were targeting American citizens based on racial and religious profiling," Harlan corrected firmly. "That was never the mission. It will never be the mission." "And now?" Parker pressed. Harlan looked around the room at the faces of those he had once led. Some supportive, others skeptical, all waiting to be convinced once more. Now we face an enemy who used that same prejudice to build a militia inside our borders. An enemy who believes certain Americans deserve power and others deserve to be subjugated. An enemy I once called brother. He presented the evidence. The Sentinel Project, Obsidian Fence, the fabricated files, the militarized police force, the training camp outside town. With each revelation, more faces hardened with determination. "This isn't about me," Harlan continued. "It's about what we swore to defend. All of us, against all enemies, foreign and domestic." By midnight, even Parker had committed to the mission. The safe house transformed into a strategic command center, with team members assigned to surveillance, intelligence gathering, and tactical planning. The first breakthrough came when Officer Harper James identified a pattern in the local police communications. Regular periods of blackout when all transmissions went silent. The gaps aligned perfectly with shipments arriving at the old factory on the outskirts of town. "They're moving equipment," Marcus concluded. "They're building their arsenal right under the town's nose." The second breakthrough was more personal. Lena's investigative team discovered Vane's current base of operations, an abandoned military training facility where he and Harlan had trained together as young officers. "It's symbolic," Harlan noted. "He wants to end this where we began." As preparations continued, Harlan took a moment alone outside the cabin, gazing at the stars. The weight of command, the responsibility for lives and legacy, settled on his shoulders like a familiar burden. Colonel Winters joined him, offering a cup of coffee. "Your team is ready," she reported. "Lena has secured legal protection for everyone involved. Reggie is prepared with the media if this goes public." Harlan nodded, grateful for the network of support they had built, and for the others on the list. The other black officers who had been targeted, all warned and secured. If Vane moved against any of them, they would know immediately. A notification sounded simultaneously on their phones. The message contained only a link to a video. Opening it, Lena's face appeared on screen, bound to a chair with a visible bruise on her cheek. The camera panned to reveal Colonel Dorian Vane standing behind her. "Hello, Harlan," Vane said, his scarred face twisted into a cold smile. "Years are a long time between conversations. I thought this time we should have it face to face." The camera showed they were inside the same training facility they had identified earlier. Mercenaries with tactical gear patrolled in the background. "You have 6 hours," Vane continued. "Come alone and unarmed, or your wife joins the casualty list of your righteous crusade." The video ended, leaving Harlan staring at a blank screen, his face betraying no emotion, even as his heart pounded against his ribs. "It's a trap," Winters declared. "The obvious one." "Of course it is," Harlan agreed. He's forcing my hand, trying to isolate me from support. Can we send a tactical team? No, Harlan interrupted. Too many variables. Too many hostages at risk. He looked back toward the safe house where his team waited for orders. We'll do this my way, from inside. He gathered everyone for the final briefing. Vane has Lena. He wants me to arrive alone and unarmed at the old Barrett training facility at dawn. Seriously, you're considering going alone? Darius protested. No, Harlan assured him. I'll go first, creating the distraction. You'll be my shadows. He turned to Officer Harper James. We need your knowledge of local police frequencies and procedures. If Royce mobilizes to support Vane, we need early warning. To Colonel Winters, he added, set up a dead man switch. If I go dark for more than 3 hours, the complete file gets sent to all major media outlets, military command, and congressional oversight committees. Preparations continued through the night. Equipment checked, positions mapped, contingencies planned for every scenario they could anticipate. As dawn approached, Harlan changed into simple civilian clothes, carrying nothing but his military identification and wedding ring. This isn't goodbye, he told his team. This is only the next phase of the operation. As Harlan drove toward the old training facility, the rising sun painted the Virginia countryside in tones of gold and amber. The same light would soon illuminate a confrontation years in the making, and reckoning between two men who had once sworn the same oath, but had taken radically different paths in their service. The facility appeared on the horizon, a complex of low buildings surrounded by fences, topped with barbed wire. As he approached the gate, cameras tracked his movement. The gate opened automatically, an invitation to enter the lion's den. He parked and exited the vehicle with his hands visible. Armed men emerged from guard positions, searching him roughly before escorting him inside. Through long corridors that had once housed America's finest soldiers, they led him to a central command room, and there, standing in the place where they had once trained side by side, was Colonel Dorian Vane, older, scarred, but with the same cold intensity in his eyes. For the first time in years, the two men faced each other directly. Vane smiled. Welcome back, General. Let's finish what you started. The Barrett training facility stood like a ghost of America's military past. Once a proud center for special operations training, it was now a ruined monument to Cold War strategy long abandoned. As Harlan walked its corridors, memories surfaced. Training until midnight, planning simulated operations, leading young soldiers who trusted him with their lives. Now those same corridors were filled with surveillance cameras and tripwires, transforming the facility into a web with Vane at its center. With every step, Harlan cataloged security positions, exit points, and structural weaknesses, instincts honed by decades in uniform never fading, even in civilian clothes. A monitor on the wall showed a live feed of Lena. She sat blindfolded in a distant room, her wrists bound to the arms of a metal chair. Despite the restraints, her posture remained defiant, chin lifted, shoulders squared. She was afraid, but not broken. Harlan felt a surge of pride mixed with fear. 25 years of marriage had taught him never to underestimate Lena Brooks. Admire my hospitality? Vane's voice came from behind him. The years had hardened his once handsome face, leaving it gaunt and scarred. He wore tactical pants and a black t-shirt that revealed arms corded with muscle. A soldier who had never stopped training for a war of his own creation. She's a civilian, Harlan replied calmly. This is between us. Vane circled him slowly, like a predator assessing prey. That's where you're wrong. There are no civilians in this war, only combatants and casualties. He gestured toward a door. Come, I've prepared something to drink. We have much to discuss. The command room had been converted into an improvised living space. Maps covered one wall, red pins marking locations across the country. A bottle of expensive whiskey rested on a desk beside 2 glasses. "Drink?" Vane offered, pouring amber liquid into both glasses. "You always preferred bourbon, if I remember." "I'd prefer the safety of my wife," Harlan replied. Vane smiled coldly, pushing a glass toward him. "She'll stay comfortable while you listen. That's the deal." Harlan took the glass, but did not drink. He needed Vane to talk. He needed time for what he had set in motion the moment he entered the facility. "I'm listening." Vane settled into a chair, swirling his whiskey. "Did you ever wonder why your brother died in that field hospital in Kandahar?" The question landed like a physical blow. Michael Brooks, Harlan's younger brother, had been a field medic, killed during an operation gone wrong. His death had been classified as enemy action. "He died serving his country," Harlan said carefully. "He died because you abandoned him," Vane corrected. "Operation Kingfisher. You made the decision to proceed without additional extraction support. The Taliban overran the medical station while the main force completed the mission." He leaned forward. "What you were never told was that the medic who died alongside your brother, that was my brother, Eric." The revelation fell with crushing weight. Harlan had never known that Vane had lost family in that same operation. "The mission parameters," Harlan began. "Skip the official line," Vane interrupted. "You chose the mission over the men. You always did. And you were rewarded for it. Promotion after promotion, while better soldiers were discarded." While Vane spoke, Harlan subtly adjusted his position, ensuring the hidden transmitter in his belt buckle had a clear signal. The device was sending encrypted audio bursts to the smartwatch on Lena's wrist, a special anniversary gift he had given her with a secondary communication chip embedded in its casing. If she was conscious and attentive, she would be receiving his message. 3 hours. Northwest corridor. Water pipe breach. "You've been carrying this for years," Harlan said, keeping Vane's attention focused on him, buying time for what had been set in motion. "Building an army of disgruntled veterans. For what? Personal revenge?" Vane laughed, a hollow sound empty of humor. "This was never only about you, Harlan. You're a symptom of a larger disease. I'm simply the surgeon." He rose and led Harlan to a computer station, displaying personnel files. Hundreds of them, each with military identification photos of Black, Hispanic, and Middle Eastern officers. These officers were promoted rapidly over more qualified candidates, Vane explained, his voice hardening. "Political appointments disguised as merit-based advancement. The system is corrupted from within. Generals chosen by the color of their skin rather than combat prowess. Advisors selected by their last names rather than strategic minds." "That's not what happened," Harlan replied. "The military finally began recognizing talent that had been overlooked for generations. They started promoting based on performance, not preference." Vane's eyes flashed with anger. "You really believe that, don't you? That your stars were earned and not handed to you to fill a quota?" Outside the facility, Officer Harper James monitored police frequencies from a concealed position. Colonel Winters had established a perimeter with members of Harlan's old unit, positioned at strategic points. They monitored the facility through thermal imaging, counting guards and mapping their movements. Meanwhile, Lena worked methodically at her restraints. The wool blindfold absorbed her tears of frustration, but her fingers remained busy. The metal hair clip she had kept hidden was slowly weakening the zip ties around her wrists. The vibration against her wrist was so faint she almost missed it. 3 pulses, then a pause, then a pattern she recognized immediately. Morse code. Harlan was alive and sending instructions. 3 hours. Northwest corridor. Water pipe breach. With renewed determination, she sawed faster at the restraints. Back in the command center, Vane opened footage from police stations across the country. Incidents of Black citizens being detained, similar to what had happened to Harlan. Each of these situations was a test, Vane explained, identifying officers willing to act without questions, building a network of law enforcement loyal to the principles on which this country was founded. White supremacy was not a founding principle, Harlan challenged, and neither was using police as personal militias. Vane ignored the comment, continuing his tour of the operation. Private defense contractors provided the funding, companies that lost billions when you reformed the military acquisition process to favor diverse suppliers. His voice dripped contempt. Meanwhile, combat readiness scores declined, while inclusion metrics improved. You weakened America's defensive posture to satisfy social engineering goals. Combat readiness actually improved under my command, Harlan corrected. You know that's documented fact. For nearly an hour, Vane described his worldview, a perspective in which America's military strength was being undermined by diversity initiatives and where traditional soldiers were being sacrificed for political correctness. It was a narrative Harlan had heard before, but never delivered with such tactical precision and resources behind it. So what's your endgame? Harlan asked finally. A coup? Martial law? What comes after purging the military of everyone who doesn't fit your preferred demographic? Restoration, Vane said simply. A return to merit-based advancement and strategic priorities driven by national security, not social justice. And you determine who has merit. Someone has to draw the line. Throughout the conversation, Harlan had been mapping the facility in his mind, identifying guard rotations and security blind spots. He had also been carefully positioning himself to keep Vane's attention away from the surveillance monitors. On one of those monitors, a shadow moved through a ventilation duct. Lena had freed herself and was navigating through the building's infrastructure, exactly as they had practiced in home security drills. Years of living under potential threat had turned theoretical security protocols into muscle memory. I need to see my wife, Harlan said firmly, interrupting Vane's monologue. All in due time. First we discuss terms, Vane replied, presenting him with an open laptop showing a video recording. You're going to make a statement. Confess that you used your position to channel Pentagon funds to radical organizations. Admit that your promotion was part of a social engineering experiment and not a merit-based advancement. And if I refuse, then Lena dies, and the world sees you as a coward who abandoned his wife to protect his reputation. Vane gestured to another monitor, showing a live transmission already connecting to multiple military command centers. Your old colleagues are watching. Your legacy is at stake. Harlan studied the man before him. Once a brother in arms, now consumed by hatred disguised as principle. He thought of the young officer who had once shown such promise, whose tactical brilliance had saved countless lives before bitterness corrupted his judgment. Do you think your stars make you clean? Vane pressed. You're just the best-behaved prisoner they ever had. They gave you the rank to control you, to make you the acceptable face of their agenda. Instead of responding directly, Harlan lowered his voice and spoke a phrase he had not used in years. Obsidian fence folds at dawn. The effect was immediate. Vane froze, recognition flashing across his features. It was not merely a phrase. It was an elimination protocol established in the early days of their service together. A declaration that if the speaker did not emerge alive at dawn, every piece of intelligence they possessed would be automatically released to multiple secure channels. You wouldn't, Vane whispered. I already have, Harlan confirmed. The entire Sentinel project, Obsidian Fence, the militia training camps, the fabricated evidence, the compromised officers, everything will go public if I'm not alive and free at dawn. Is your crusade worth that level of exposure? Fury contorted Vane's features as he realized the trap Harlan had laid. Even in apparent surrender, he had created a dead man switch that ensured victory regardless of personal outcome. You always thought 3 moves ahead, Vane growled, signaling one of his men. Check on the woman, now. As the guard hurried away, commotion erupted on one of the surveillance feeds. Lena had reached a communications relay station within the complex and was connecting a device to the main server. In the confusion, she had not noticed one of Vane's men approaching from behind. Lena felt the presence behind her a moment before he struck. Years of self-defense training activated as she dropped to the floor, narrowly dodging the baton aimed at her head. The guard stumbled forward, off balance, giving her just enough time to grab the nearest object, a heavy technical manual, and slam it with force against his knee. The guard collapsed with a howl of pain. Lena did not hesitate. She grabbed a coil of cable from the table and quickly bound his wrists, using her weight to subdue him. Despite her size disadvantage, the struggle had damaged the server. Sparks flew from one of the circuits she had been manipulating. "Damn it," she muttered, assessing the damage. The upload was incomplete. Only a fraction of the surveillance footage had transferred to her secure cloud. With no time to attempt repairs, she extracted the hard drive and quickly tucked it into a ventilation duct opening before the alarm could bring reinforcements. 20 meters away, Officer Harper James and Colonel Winters monitored communications from their concealed position in the woods. The stand-down order from the Pentagon had arrived an hour earlier, a direct order to cease all unauthorized operations involving Harrison Falls. "This is officially off the books now," Winters informed the team gathered around her. "Anyone proceeding from this point is acting against direct orders." James removed her badge and placed it on the table. "Then I'm not an officer anymore. I'm just a citizen, helping a friend." Winters nodded, removing her own insignia. "Same goes for me." One by one, the others followed suit, soldiers choosing conscience over command. Only one hesitated. Grayson Pike, a former sniper from Harlan's unit now working as a firearms instructor in Colorado. "My family," he began, his face etched with conflict. "Stay clean," Winters assured him. "We need someone outside anyway. Someone who can tell the truth if this gets complicated." Pike considered this, then shook his head. "No. The general never left anyone behind. I'm not starting now." He checked his rifle. "Besides, I'm the only one who can make that shot if it comes to it." Meanwhile, journalist Reggie Matisse was working his sources from a secure location. His editor had been skeptical about the story. A conspiracy to discredit black military leaders seemed like fantasy without concrete proof. But when Reggie published a carefully curated preview of the Obsidian Fence documents, social media erupted. Obsidian Fence began trending within hours. Military forums filled with anonymous accounts from officers who had experienced similar profiling. Public outrage grew, forcing Pentagon officials to acknowledge awareness of historical monitoring programs while denying current implementation. Inside the training facility, Harlan was escorted at gunpoint to a detention room. The space was sparse, a metal bed bolted to the floor, a sink, and a reinforced door with a small observation window. When the door locked behind him, Harlan assessed his surroundings. No obvious surveillance cameras, but likely audio monitoring. No windows, but a ventilation grate near the ceiling. He was not alone for long. A young black man in tactical gear entered with a tray of food. His uniform bore no insignia, but his bearing suggested military training. "Set it on the bed and leave," Harlan instructed, testing the waters. The young man hesitated, then set the tray down and approached, lowering his voice to a near inaudible whisper. "They call me Jonas. I read your files, the real ones." His eyes reflected a mixture of reverence and urgency. "You saved my father's unit in Mosul. You disobeyed orders to extract them when command wanted to abandon the position." Harlan observed him carefully, searching for deception. "Sergeant Major Jackson Reed's reconnaissance team?" Jonas nodded. "I got to come home because of you." He had 3 months left. He glanced nervously toward the door. "I'm not with them, not really. I thought this was about military reform, not whatever this is." I need to find my wife, Harlan said, seizing the opportunity and a potential escape route from the facility. Jonas hesitated only an instant before pulling a folded paper from his pocket. There's an old Cold War tunnel system underneath, an emergency evacuation route from when this was an official training field. He passed Harlan a rudimentary map. I can get you to the access point, but after that, you're on your own. Harlan memorized the layout, then returned the paper. Why risk this for me? Because my father used to say there are two types of officers, those who serve for the uniform and those who serve for what it represents. He said you were the second. With Jonas's help, Harlan navigated through service corridors toward the tunnel entrance. They avoided patrols using Jonas's knowledge of guard rotation schedules. As they reached a maintenance room housing the access hatch, an alarm blared throughout the facility. They've discovered you're missing, Jonas warned, working to unlock the hatch. They probably found your wife's escape too. The facility erupted into chaos as Vane ordered a total lockdown. On the surveillance feeds, he saw the empty restraint chair where Lena had been, and then the empty detention room where Harlan had been held. His carefully orchestrated plan was unraveling. Find them, he shouted to his security team. Lock down every exit. Activate perimeter sensors. While Vane's attention was focused on the escapes, Officer Harper James, Colonel Winters, and the rest of Harlan's team began their infiltration. Using the distraction to their advantage, they breached the outer fence line at multiple points, creating confusion among the guards about the direction of the main assault. Inside the tunnel system, Harlan moved quickly through the narrow passage. Guided by the memorized map, the air was stale, heavy with decades of disuse. His progress slowed when he reached a junction not indicated on Jonas's drawing. A sound from the left passage drew his attention, the faint rustle of movement against concrete. He tensed, ready for confrontation, only to find Lena emerging from the shadows, the hard drive clutched protectively against her chest. You're 2 hours early, Shiho said with a smile of relief that did not entirely mask her exhaustion. They embraced briefly. Years of shared danger made them efficient even in reunion. Jonas? She asked, noting his solitary arrival. He's buying us time, Harlan replied, his face somber. He volunteered to create a distraction above ground. Jonas was doing exactly that, systematically triggering false alarms in different sectors of the facility, diverting security teams away from the tunnel access points. His distraction worked until a suspicious guard recognized him entering a restricted zone. Hey, you don't have authorization for that sector, the guard shouted. Jonas ran, leading the pursuit away from the tunnels and toward the east wing of the facility. Cornered in a communications room, he barricaded the door with equipment. Through the reinforced glass, he could see Harlan and Lena emerging from a hidden exit across the courtyard. When the guards finally breached the room, Jonas offered no resistance. As they restrained him, he looked one last time through the window to see Harlan turning toward him, their eyes meeting across the distance. Harlan raised his hand in a solemn salute, a recognition of the sacrifice. Jonas returned it with a slight nod before being dragged away. Meanwhile, Officer Harper James had infiltrated the south entrance, using her knowledge of police tactical procedures to anticipate and counter the security response. As she moved deeper into the facility, she encountered Colonel Winters, who had entered from the east. Harlan? Winters asked tensely. No sign yet, but I've identified their communications center, James replied. Together, they headed toward the control center, where they hoped to disable the facility's security systems and gather more intelligence. Instead, they found themselves ambushed by Vane's men. In the ensuing firefight, Winters was separated from James and captured. Vane personally oversaw Winters' restraint, seating her in a chair before a camera. Colonel Reese Winters, he said, adjusting the lighting for maximum effect. The Pentagon's troubleshooter. How disappointing to find you operating against direct orders. I follow the oath, not the order, Winters replied calmly, Something you forgot long ago. Vane struck her across the face, splitting her lip. You have no idea what's coming, she said through the blood, a confident smile forming despite her vulnerable position. Moments later, the facility's speakers crackled, and Harlan's voice filled the room. Attention all personnel. This is General Harlan Brooks. The facility has been compromised. All recordings of illegal operations are currently being transmitted to military command channels. Vane lunged for the communications control panel, but it was already too late. Harlan had used Lena's hard drive to access the system remotely, broadcasting the conspiracy files through the facility's own stolen military satellite technology. Technology that still responded to Harlan's command codes. How? Vane demanded, turning to Winters. You forgot who designed the security protocols for these facilities, she replied. Brooks wrote the manual you're trying to use against him. As the transmission continued, one document in particular appeared on screens throughout the facility, a Sentinel Project authorization form bearing Senator Everett Hale's signature alongside detailed instructions to direct scrutiny toward successful black officers and subject them to intensified review and possible career sabotage. Vane realized his carefully constructed network was being exposed minute by minute. In a desperate attempt to maintain control, he ran to the strategy room and initiated an emergency protocol. He typed a code that activated a rarely used security measure. Red lights began flashing as a computerized voice announced, "Facility self-destruct sequence initiated. You have 10 minutes to evacuate. This is not a drill. If I die," Vane declared to the empty room, his face illuminated by emergency lights, "everything burns." The countdown had begun throughout the facility. Both Vane's men and Harlan's team raced to evacuate. Officer Harper James freed Colonel Winters, and together they fought toward the exit. Harlan and Lena, who had just reached the perimeter, heard the alarm and understood its meaning. Immediately, instead of continuing to safety, they turned back toward the facility. Their mission was not complete, not while others remained inside, not while evidence could be destroyed, and not while Vane remained unaccounted for. As they ran against time, Harlan glimpsed Vane through a window in the strategy room, frantically gathering files. Their eyes met across the distance, General and Colonel, once brothers in arms, now separated by an unbridgeable chasm of ideology and betrayal. Harlan burst through the door, charging toward the control panel, where he could abort the self-destruct sequence. Vane intercepted him, and the two men collided in a brutal struggle that transcended physical combat. "Do you think your stars make you just?" Vane shouted, landing a blow to Harlan's ribs. "They make me accountable," Harlan replied, his military training evident in every precise movement. "I never wanted to be your enemy," he growled, blocking a strike. "You made me your mirror." The control panel sparked and smoked from a stray bullet, accelerating the countdown. With 5 minutes remaining, Lena reached the panel and attempted to override the sequence using the partial code Harlan had whispered earlier. The system responded, but only partially, extending the countdown rather than canceling it completely. "We have 5 minutes," she shouted over the alarms. The struggle between Harlan and Vane intensified, each man drawing on decades of training and a lifetime of conviction. When Vane drew a hidden weapon, the confrontation reached its climax. In a split-second decision that defined everything he stood for, Harlan disarmed Vane rather than letting him die in the impending explosion. He rendered him unconscious with a precise strike. Harlan lifted his former friend over his shoulder. "We don't leave anyone behind," he told Lena as they ran for the exit. Not even him. Through collapsing corridors and failing security systems, they reached the exterior, where James and Winters had organized the evacuation. When the last of their team crossed the perimeter, the facility exploded behind them. Concrete and steel gave way to fire and destruction, erasing decades of history in moments. Harlan, Lena, and the unconscious Vane emerged from the rubble. The flames consumed what remained of the Barrett training facility. a visual metaphor for the old order collapsing under the weight of long-hidden truths. Dawn broke over the smoking ruins of the Barrett training facility. Emergency vehicles lined the perimeter, their lights casting eerie blue and red patterns across the destruction. Paramedics attended the wounded, while firefighters battled the remaining flames. The air smelled of smoke, melted plastic, and the unmistakable trace of violence. Lena sat apart from the chaos, her fingers dancing across her tablet as she attempted to restore data from the damaged hard drive. The explosion had corrupted portions of the evidence, but enough remained to tell their story. Beside her, Colonel Winters coordinated with trusted Pentagon contacts, establishing secure communication channels outside normal protocols. "We have 5 minutes before Homeland Security shuts this down," Winters warned, checking her watch. "They're mobilizing a containment team from Richmond." "I'm working on it," Lena murmured, her concentration absolute. "Encryption is holding, but transfer speed is compromised. We need more time." Nearby, Harlan knelt beside the unconscious form of Colonel Vane, now secured with zip ties and guarded by Marcus and Darius. Despite everything, something in Harlan could not let go of the man they had once been. Soldiers who had sworn to defend the same Constitution, who had once trusted each other with their lives. "Sir," Darius approached cautiously, "the override codes for the bombs, how did you know they would work?" "I didn't," Harlan admitted. "But Lena and I established emergency protocols years ago, personal codes we would recognize." He looked toward his wife with admiration. She only had part of the sequence, enough to buy us time, not to stop it completely. Officer Harper James arrived at a run, her uniform torn and stained with soot. "Royce is mobilizing the local police to secure the area. They're 5 miles out and closing fast." "That complicates things," Harlan observed calmly. The original extraction plan had assumed they would have more time before official response teams arrived. "We need to separate," Winters suggested. "Different evacuation routes. Rendezvous at the secondary location." Harlan shook his head. "No. We face this together." He turned to James. "They have body cameras on Royce's team, standard issue. They're required to activate them for all operations." "Good. Let them document what they find. The truth needs witnesses." Just then, Vane began to stir, coughing and blinking to clear his vision. When his sight cleared, he found Harlan staring at him, not with hatred, but with something far more devastating. Pity. "You should have let me die," Vane said through gritted teeth. "That's the difference between us," Harlan replied. "It always has been." Vane struggled briefly against his restraints before slumping in defeat. "You've won this battle, but the war continues. There are others who believe as I do, men with power and conviction." "I'm counting on it," Harlan said, "because now they'll be forced into the light." A distant explosion shook the east section of the facility, a secondary detonation from ruptured gas lines. The blast sent everyone ducking for cover. In the confusion, Vane seized his chance, rolling and sprinting toward the woods. Despite his bound hands, Harlan gave chase, followed by Marcus. They pursued Vane into the nearby forest, where the terrain grew treacherous. Fallen trees, hidden sinkholes, and the disorienting uniformity of the woods. Vane, despite his restraints, moved with the desperation of a man who had nothing left to lose. "He's heading for the emergency cache," Marcus shouted, recognizing the direction. "There are weapons. Supplies." The warning died in his throat as gunfire erupted from ahead. Vane had apparently reached his destination. Harlan and Marcus took cover behind a fallen oak, assessing the situation. "I have 3 magazines and emergency transponders," Vane called. "Enough to keep you at bay until my reinforcements arrive." "There are no reinforcements," Harlan replied calmly. "Your network is exposed. Your allies are distancing themselves. Senator Hale is already issuing denials. Do you think this was built with the support of a single senator?" Vane laughed bitterly. "We got farther than you know." While they exchanged words, Marcus circled Vane's position, using the forest canopy to flank him. Harlan kept the conversation going, knowing every minute they delayed increased the chances that the evidence would reach secure servers beyond anyone's ability to suppress it. This country was built on certain principles, Vane continued, his voice echoing among the trees. Order, hierarchy, natural leadership. What you're defending is chaos disguised as equality. What I'm defending, Harlan countered, is the oath we both took to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He paused, letting the words sink in. That document says we the people, Dorian, all of us. Not only those who believe leaders should look like you. A rustle from Vane's position suggested movement. Harlan tensed, ready for another exchange of fire. Instead, Vane's voice came from closer than expected. Do you know what happens to men like me in prison? He said, sounding suddenly tired. Men who know what I know. You'll have a fair trial, Harlan assured him. All your grievances on the public record. Isn't that what you wanted? For people to hear your truth? Silence fell over the forest. Then a single gunshot echoed among the trees. Harlan advanced quickly, weapon ready, to find Vane slumped against a tree trunk. The colonel had turned his weapon on himself, choosing a final act of defiance rather than surrender. Marcus emerged from the underbrush, his expression somber. He was never going to let you win completely. Harlan knelt beside his former friend, checking for a pulse, despite knowing he would find none. He thought he was winning by denying us justice, he said softly. He never understood that this was never about him or me. It was about the system we both served. They carried Vane's body back to the clearing, where Lena's face told Harlan everything he needed to know. The transfer had completed. The evidence was secure. The truth would not be buried again. When they emerged from the trees, a new complication appeared on the horizon. Black SUVs with government plates and the unmistakable profile of a Homeland Security tactical response team. At their head, a senior officer Harlan recognized from Pentagon briefings. General Brooks, the officer called, approaching with hands deliberately visible. I have orders to detain you and your team, pending investigation into unauthorized operations and destruction of government property. Harlan stood firm, aware that his team had formed a protective circle around him and Lena. Under what authority? Direct from the Secretary of Defense, sir, the officer replied. I'd like to see those orders, Agent Taylor, Winters said, stepping forward. The standoff stretched into uncomfortable silence. Behind them, the facility continued to burn. Years of covert operations reduced to ash and twisted metal. News helicopters circled overhead, capturing footage already being broadcast live to millions. Harlan made a decision, removing his tactical gear. I'll go with you voluntarily, he said, advancing with hands raised. My team acted under my direct orders. Any charges should be mine alone. Harlan, no, Lena said, gripping his arm. It's the right decision, he assured her. The evidence is out. Now we play by the rules we swore to defend. Before Agent Taylor could place Harlan in custody, Colonel Winters received an urgent communication. Her expression shifted from tension to surprise as she listened. Stand down, Agent Taylor, she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of command. New orders from the Joint Chiefs. General Brooks and his team are to be escorted to secure Pentagon facilities for debriefing. Not detention. Taylor hesitated, clearly conflicted by the conflicting instructions. I need verification. Check your secure channel, Winters replied with confidence. While Taylor confirmed the new orders, Winters explained quietly to Harlan. Reggie's transmission went viral. The Joint Chiefs are distancing themselves from Obsidian Fence. They're positioning themselves as the ones who uncovered and exposed the conspiracy, not the ones who enabled it. Politics, Harlan observed without surprise. Politics that works in our favor for once, Lena added pragmatically. As they were escorted toward the waiting vehicles, a different kind of confrontation unfolded. Local news teams, alerted by Reggie's strategic leaks, pushed against police barriers, capturing everything with their cameras. Among them was Reggie, his press credentials clearly visible as he broadcast live. "General Brooks," the reporters shouted. "What happened here? Were you kidnapped? Is this connected to your illegal arrest?" Harlan paused, looking directly into the cameras. He knew this moment would define the narrative. With Lena at his side, he addressed not only the reporters, but the millions watching online. What happened here today was the exposure of a cancer within our institutions. A systematic effort to undermine the advancement of qualified officers based solely on their race. The evidence is secured and will be presented through proper channels. He glanced at the burning facility behind him. This fire represents the end of secrecy, not the beginning of chaos. As they were driven away, Homeland Security established a perimeter around the site. Officer Harper James remained behind, coordinating with local authorities who had arrived to secure the scene. Sergeant Royce was among them, his face pale as he recognized the magnitude of what he had become involved in. Officer James saluted him stiffly. "I believe you're suspended from duty, and I believe you're being investigated for civil rights violations," she said calmly, raising her phone and displaying an official notification from the Department of Justice. "Consider this my formal statement, that I witnessed you participating in a conspiracy to violate the constitutional rights of General Harlan Brooks." The tables had turned completely. What had begun as a small-town traffic stop had exposed a network of corruption reaching the highest levels of government. In Washington, the response was immediate and overwhelming. The president called an emergency press conference, formally apologizing to General Brooks and announcing an immediate investigation into the Obsidian Fence and Sentinel projects and all related surveillance programs targeting minority service members. Senator Everett Hale was suspended from his committee duties pending the investigation, his presidential ambitions evaporating as journalists dug into his connections to Vane's operation. Military commands across all branches received orders to review promotion and evaluation practices for evidence of systemic bias. The storm had broken, and in its wake emerged an opportunity for genuine change from the rubble of long-hidden truths. In the weeks that followed, the world moved on to new crises and controversies, but the shock waves from Harrison Falls continued rippling through American institutions. In a small cabin on the shores of Lake Mitchell, miles from the nearest town, Harlan Brooks sat on an aging dock with a fishing rod in his hand, the water's surface reflecting a peace that had eluded him for years. The simple rusticity of the cabin was exactly what he needed. No internet, minimal cell service, and infinite silence. Old radios in various states of repair filled the screened porch, a hobby he had neglected during years of command responsibilities. Now they provided meditative focus as his hands remembered skills his mind had filed away. On the small wooden desk inside rested a framed photograph. Harlan and Lena on one side, Jonas Reed on the other, all smiling during a brief moment of celebration after Jonas had been granted immunity in exchange for testifying against Vane's remaining network. The crunch of tires on gravel announced a visitor. Harlan did not turn, recognizing the familiar cadence of Lena's footsteps on the wooden path to the dock. She settled beside him. Her business attire had been replaced by jeans and a simple blouse, her briefcase exchanged for a folder of documents. "Good news," she announced without preamble. "The Military Review Board has completed its investigation. All officers identified in the Obsidian Fence documents will receive formal apologies and compensation for career impacts." He nodded, his gaze still fixed on the still surface of the lake. "And the others, the ones who never rose high enough to be targeted?" "That's Phase 2, Lena replied. "Complete review of promotion practices across all branches with civilian oversight." She squeezed his hand. "It's not perfect, but it's progress." They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of recent events settling between them. Lena had become the public face of the fight, her legal expertise and moral clarity making her the natural spokesperson for affected service members. Harlan had deliberately stepped back, understanding that lasting change required more than one man's story. "Is there anything else?" he asked after a while. "Officer James has been reinstated. Not only reinstated, but promoted to detective and offered a position in federal internal affairs to help identify similar corruption patterns in other departments." Harlan allowed a small smile to touch his face. "She'll be excellent at it. She asked about you. Said to tell you she's starting with the Harrison Falls Police Department. Royce has been arrested, and they're reviewing every case he handled for civil rights violations." The fishing line twitched gently, but he made no move to reel it in, letting the curious fish that had found his bait continue its investigation. "And Reggie?" he asked. "Pulitzer nomination for his coverage," Lena reported. "But he's struggling. Death threats, nightmares, PTSD from the whole experience." She paused. "He could use a visit from someone who understands combat stress." Harlan nodded. "I'll call him tomorrow." 2 days later, Harlan drove to Washington for the first time since the incident. He found Reggie Matisse in a cafe near the post offices. The journalist's usual energetic demeanor was diminished by dark circles under his eyes and the constant scanning of his surroundings. The hypervigilance Harlan recognized from countless combat veterans returning home. "General?" Reggie greeted, rising automatically. "Just Harlan," he corrected gently. "The uniform is on hold for a while." They talked for hours, not about the investigation or the story, but about living with the aftermath of danger, about how to sleep when your brain won't stop scanning for threats, about the difference between necessary caution and paranoia. When they parted, Reggie stood a little straighter. The connection with someone who truly understood had provided more comfort than any therapy session. "The truth has a cost," Harlan told him as they shook hands. "But silence costs more." Reggie nodded, recognition shining in his eyes. "I'll remember that." The following week brought another visitor to the cabin. Colonel Reese Winters, now officially retired from active intelligence duties, arrived with a small box containing her personal effects from the Pentagon and a sealed envelope. "I couldn't let you hide out here forever," she said by way of greeting, looking approvingly at the simple cabin. "Good place to decompress." They talked over coffee on the porch about the changes rippling through the military establishment, the uncomfortable self-examination, the resistance from old gatekeepers, the tentative hope of younger officers who had lived too long under invisible ceilings. "I brought you something," Winters said finally, handing him the envelope. "I found it in a secure file during the cleanup operation." Inside was a single sheet of paper bearing a list of official signatures. Men and women who had served under Harlan's command over the years, many now in leadership positions themselves. At the bottom was a simple message: "If you ever want to lead again, we'll follow." Harlan folded the paper carefully and placed it in his shirt pocket. "Thank you, just so you know where I stand." "When you're ready," Winters replied. After she left, Harlan drove to Harrison Falls one last time. The town had changed in subtle ways. The police station stood empty, its operations temporarily taken over by state authorities, while a complete departmental reform was conducted. The mayor's office was also vacant. Wilson had resigned before facing federal corruption charges. Harlan walked the quiet streets, remembering the initial fear and tension of his first visit. Some residents recognized him. Some nodded respectfully. Others looked away ashamed or with lingering resentment. The gas station where everything had begun had a new employee. Frank, the conspiracy theorist, was among those arrested in the subsequent investigation. In the weeks that followed, Lena began work on a project she had contemplated for years, a memoir titled Invisible Stars, chronicling the stories of black military heroes whose contributions had been systematically minimized or erased from official histories. When she asked Harlan to write the foreword, he initially resisted. "I'm not a writer," he protested, "and I'm not interested in becoming a symbol." "You already are," she replied. "The question is whether you'll help shape what that symbol means." Meanwhile, in a federal detention center awaiting trial, former Sergeant Royce received a visit from an attorney representing multiple pending civil rights lawsuits from citizens who had suffered treatment similar to what Harlan had experienced. Royce had expected intimidation or threats. Instead, the attorney simply presented documented evidence of his pattern of behavior and a choice: cooperate with investigations into systemic abuses or face maximum penalties alone. The ripple effects continued. Military academies revised their leadership programs to include case studies on institutional bias. Police departments implemented new accountability measures. Government contractors faced increased scrutiny of their hiring and lobbying practices. And in a maximum security federal prison, a letter arrived for inmate number 2409, formerly Colonel Dorian Vane. The envelope bore no return address, but the content was unmistakable. A single handwritten page from Harlan. "You failed because you fought for your anger. I won because I fought for the people. When you're ready to remember what service truly means, I'll be waiting." Vane read the letter 3 times before tearing it carefully into pieces. But that same night, he retrieved the fragments from his trash and reassembled them meticulously. 2 months after the Harrison Falls incident, Harlan received an unexpected offer: an appointment as Director of National Defense Ethics, a newly created position to implement reforms across all service branches. His initial instinct was to decline, to remain in the quiet refuge he had established away from the spotlight. Before responding, he visited Jonas Reed's mother in Philadelphia, a small row house filled with photographs of her son in uniform, proud evidence of a family tradition of service. Mrs. Reed received him with quiet dignity. "Jonas wrote to me about you," she said, serving him tea in her best china. "He said you were the kind of officer who remembered why the uniform mattered." She studied Harlan's face. "This country needs more leaders who understand that." "I'm not sure I can be what they need now," Harlan admitted. Mrs. Reed took his hand firmly. "Don't let my son's sacrifice be forgotten. He believed in the change you represent." Those words accompanied him on the flight back to Washington, where he finally accepted the position. Not for redemption or vindication, but because systems only change when good people work from within, using their knowledge of the machine to recalibrate its purpose. Was integrity ever about winning, or was it always about standing firm when the world tried to break you? As Harlan Brooks showed us, sometimes the most powerful weapon is not force, but unwavering principle. Joy. And subscribe for more powerful stories about courage in the face of injustice. Your support helps these important narratives reach those who need to hear them.